All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. I am Andrew, aka Postmodern CRT Mindgasms, for the purposes of this video, and I'm going to do my next video in my series on the book called Cynical Theories by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, of course. James Lindsay, who I call a professional mangler of philosophy and former mathematician, and Helen Pluckrose, the journalist, from their book called Cynical Theories. And this is about their chapter in which they claim that critical race theory assumes what they call the postmodern political principle, which isn't even actually a thing and that exists, and they totally invented, and it makes no sense. And so, yeah, we're going to get into this particular chapter and, yeah, just go through my notes on it a little bit. All right. So chapter 5 notes. Like I said, they claim that critical race theory assumes what they call the postmodern political principle. Like I said, this is not actually a thing at all. They totally invented this term. No, no so-called postmodernists like Derrida or Foucault or Baudrillard or anyone else like that ever even uses this term. There's no such thing as the most postmodern political principle. Political people don't use that term. Even the cringy woke activists who uh, Helen Pluckrose and James Lindsay sometimes rightfully criticize. This is not a thing. The first instance of this is in this book when they use it for the first time. It the postmodern political principle does not exist. They totally made it up. It's just another way that, like, throughout this book and throughout a lot of what Jordan Peterson has said about so-called postmodernism, they're falsely connecting it to critical theory and critical race theory by saying that these thinkers say some things that sound similar and they lie about them explicitly supporting each other, even though they didn't, and in many cases they rejected this theory. Like, for example, remember when in my I think it was my previous video about the the same book, Cynical Theories. It was a chapter in which James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose were literally arguing that queer theory is Maoist and postmodernist, and they drew this false connection to postmodernism that they draw in every chapter, basically. Um, and remember, I read you that paper, some of that paper in gender theory, in which gender theory scholars explicitly refuted one of Foucault's specific ideas. So again, this is just a totally false connection to postmodernism that I think intellectual frauds like James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose are always doing. And anyway, so they go on. So the other than this false postmodern political principle that they totally invent, they also criticize critical race theory. And my education on critical race theory specifically has improved since since I first read this book, because I agreed with their criticisms about critical race theory, but now I don't, and I I know exactly what they're getting wrong here. So they're conflated, as I've talked about before when I've discussed critical race theory, particularly in my book, like in my book or series on Silent Covenants, the book by the famous seminal figure in critical race theory named Derek Bell, about the difference between critical race theorists and anti-racists, and how critical race theorists precede anti-racists, and they have a different, they have like a somewhat sociological theory of race, but they don't, a lot of them haven't even read the anti-racists, and a lot of them disagree with them. Like some critical race theorists, for example, have explicitly rejected a lot of the claims of people like Robin DiAngelo in their infamous book White Fragility, and Ta-Nehisi Coates, and his book, The Between the World and Me, and Ibram X. Kennedy in his book, How to Be an Anti-Racist. The anti-racists are the extreme hardcore people, and the so they're way more hardcore than the critical race theorists. And the critical race theorists are there. It's mostly legal theory. Like a lot of it was civil rights lawyers and the philosophy about civil rights laws and examining specific historical cases of civil rights. And so it's really not the same thing at all. So I agree with these critiques that they're saying, but they're attributing him to a false villain again, just like how they falsely attributed this connection between critical race theory and postmodernism. They're also mislabeling and getting the definition wrong of critical race theory itself, not only postmodernism, as I've discussed before, but critical race theory too. And so I agree with the criticisms that some note this is important. Some critical race theorists themselves have lobbied these specific criticisms of anti-racism. So I would agree that anti-racism in general seems to assume that society is constructed by oppressive and racist systems of power. So if this is what James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose define as the postmodern political principle, then this is a this is totally not what postmodernism is at all. As I've explained before in my series on Foucault's History of Sexuality book, this is a total misunderstanding of the way that Foucault views the concept of power. So he he did not think that power is inherently bad, and he did not think that society was inherently oppressive. He thinks that power can sometimes be bad, sometimes power can be good. It depends on who's using the power and what they're using it for. The people, the government can do good things with their power. They can do bad things with their power and oppress people. And then the oppressed people can use power for good to overtake the tyrannical governments, which like he even doesn't specifically use those examples, but he talks about specifically how power can be bad and how power can be good. It depends on the relevant circumstances. It's complex, pretty much common sense nuance, right? So that's nothing to do this principle. If they're connecting this postmodern political principle to critical race theory, bears nothing at all in common with any way that Foucault or Derrida or the seminal so-called postmodernist thinkers who were actually post-structuralists, uh, anything they ever said about power. So yes, critical or not anti-racism does seem to assume that society is constructed by oppressive and racist systems of power, which is, like I was saying, antithetical to both postmodernism and critical race theory. And there's not a connection between postmodernism and critical race theory either. Keep that in mind as well. So so furthermore, it is clearly false, however, that society is constructed by oppressive and racist systems of power. So that's why specifically the anti-racists are the fucking wackos, right? They're the ones who are like constructing this radical, inaccurate conspiracy theory about society. And critical race theorists and so-called postmodernists, generally speaking, are completely against this false narrative that anti-racists tout about society being constructed by oppressive and racist systems of power. So this is one of many valid criticisms of specifically anti-racism, not critical race theory, not postmodernism. It has virtually nothing to do. It has basically absolutely nothing to do with critical race theory or postmodernism, and everything to do with anti-racism, which they don't even mention in this chapter, and they barely mention in the book at all. So again, just like every other chapter in the book, James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose are completely wrong as usual about everything they say about every so-called critical theory they mention, even though critical race theory and critical theory are totally different realms of philosophical thought, as I've explained before, and critical race theory is totally different from anti-racism, and all of the above are totally different from postmodernism. So, right, yeah, anyway, thanks again, everyone, for watching my critique of this particular chapter 5 of the book called Cynical Theories by James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose. Smash that like button, destroy it, demolish it, or make sweet love to it, whatever you want to do. And share these mindgasms everywhere, spread them all across the world, share them with your friends and everyone you know. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. A lot of people watch the videos, but don't subscribe to my channel, so please do so. It's easy for you and it doesn't cost anything. And also click the bell to be notified when I come out with new videos, of course. I think the next one that I'll put out tomorrow will be a clip from my video in which I'm commenting on the historian Yuval Noah Harari's opinion that AI could start a new religion. And it's his specific claim that AI could not only necessarily become a god, but I think it could become a god, but AI could become a god and write a new Bible that is supposedly the most correct religion. Or maybe there could be warring religious factions that are pro and anti AI. So that's fascinating. So check out that clip tomorrow. And also, of course, check out my Patreon page. The link is in the description as always. And most importantly, like I always say, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And as usual, James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose are complete idiots who don't know it, don't have the slightest fucking clue of what they're talking about when it comes to any realm of philosophical or political thought, including critical theory, critical race theory, anti-racism, and postmodernism. All right. Thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.